Welcome back into the Daily Dose. The show is still brought to you by Give'emHellBrigham.com and by CougarSportsInsider.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. A couple of excellent outlets for BYU coverage. Thank you to those of you who are supporting the show. We have blown past 2,500 subscribers. That's in the rearview mirror now. We are charging towards our goal of 3,000 subscribers by the time the season kicks off. Thank you to all of you who stole the phones of your friends and your family and your loved ones and helped them get subscribed to the Daily Dose. You've enhanced their lives. You've enhanced the platform here. You're fueling the algorithm. I appreciate your support. It really does mean the world to me. Thank you so much. Big 12 Media Days are in the books. BYU's first real official conference duties, I guess, are in the books. BYU went and made a very, very strong first impression. Cody Epps, Keaton Slovis, they were great as players. Kalani Sitake did Kalani Sitake things. He's just so easy to fall in love with. He's so personable and so genuine. He was fantastic. He was magnificent with all of the different interviews that he did. He made a strong first impression. And Tom Homa was there and did a great job for BYU as well. That lots of positive things to say about BYU coming out of media days. There's also a lot of storylines. People are still talking about realignment. They're talking about TV deals, even Big 12 Mexico. There's lots of bigger things happening in the conference that I think there were some really important storylines from BYU that have kind of flown under the radar as we get lost in expansion hysteria. So I wanted to take some of my takeaways as I've consumed all of the content, read everything, listened to everything I can from media days. And I wanted to just talk about some of the BYU bullet points that really kind of stood out to me over the last 48 hours or so. First and foremost, Keaton Slovis made a couple of different references to the fact that this year's schedule is probably the toughest schedule he's faced in his college career. He's been doing this P5 thing for a long time. He played at USC, he played at Pitt, and he looks at BYU's schedule in 2023 and says, wow, this is the toughest I've ever faced. Could that be lip service? Yeah, maybe. But on paper, it has a pretty strong argument to make. You've got Arkansas, you've got Texas, you've got Oklahoma, you've got TCU. I mean, you've got some of the biggest and toughest teams in this conference on the schedule. It's going to be brutal for BYU. Cougar fans have been accustomed to playing 5-6 Power 5 games every single year. And we've seen the takes about how it's going to be difficult to transition to this schedule, and it's a tough upgrade. And it's true, it is. And I think that people across the country are discounting BYU's level of preparation because of the schedules they've played throughout independence. However, 10 Power 5 opponents back to back to back to back to back, that's going to be challenging. And even Keaton Slovis looks at that and says, wow, that's tough. And I know there's teams like Cincinnati in there that a month ago, they weren't Power 5 teams, so you wouldn't count them as 10 back to back to back to back then. But they were also in the playoff just a couple of years ago. I mean, this isn't a regular G5 team, and now they're in the Big 12, the same way that BYU is. I think this schedule is going to be a lot tougher than most BYU fans are giving it credit for now. Having said that, I think BYU is going to be much tougher than most national pundits are giving BYU credit for right now. Another thing Keaton Slovis said that we've made mention of here at the Daily Dose a couple of times, he talked about the Big 12 energy on campus. And he said that they're not really talking a ton about the Big 12 as a team in the locker room. They're talking about how they need to get better and things like that, but they're not talking about the Big 12 and the excitement specifically. But he said that as soon as he visited BYU out of the transfer portal, just on a recruit visit, he could feel the energy, that there was this common bond across everybody in campus, everybody in the AD, that BYU really wants to be great. And he made mention that was unique. He didn't feel that at USC. He didn't feel that at Pitt, that there is this real, tangible, almost material, you can latch onto it energy as soon as you step on campus. It's the same kind of energy that I felt, that I've talked about when I was there for the Big 12 launch party. I think a lot of people have felt that kind of energy, and it's real, and it's really hard to describe if you haven't just sort of walked around on campus and felt it for yourself. But there's something different about BYU right now. There's a different kind of aura and energy. It's hard to explain. I don't know how to describe it, but there's something there, and Keaton Slovis made mention of that. And we'll see how that motivates this team throughout the season. Another takeaway, Cody Epps, man. The kid is just magnetic. People love him. And he is just such a great leader for this team. I love the way he talks about how he fits into BYU. He and Slovis both talked about this quite a bit, but Cody does it in a way that is really easy to understand and grasp. But they talk about being non-LDS players, not from Utah, and fitting into BYU. And both of them said it's really easy to do, that this locker room is real, it's genuine. And as long as you have values that sort of align with the LDS church, just in terms of trying to be a good person and trying to love others and trying to be kind, then you're going to fit into this locker room more often than you're not. That's a huge testament to the culture that Kalani Sitake has created. I think if you go back 10, 15 years, 20 years, that wasn't always the case. People felt like, if there was a minority, whether it be a racial minority or a religious minority that would come into the locker room, they would talk about how they felt like they were a minority and they had to force themselves to fit in. But it's different listening to Slovis and Cody Epps talking about it, that it's just really natural for them. It wasn't hard. It's been easy to fit in with the team. That's cool. That's progress from BYU, and that is a huge kudos to Kalani Sitake. Those kinds of recommendations, those kinds of endorsements from players like Epps and Slovis are going to be hugely beneficial for BYU down the road. Another thing, BYU learned from their experience in the Mountain West Conference, and they improved. BYU had a reputation of being difficult to deal with. And whether that's fair, whether that's unfair, the reputation was there, and the perception is reality. Doesn't really matter if it was true or not at this point. It's over. It's in the past. But Tom Homo is going out of his way to talk about how BYU just wants to be a team player in the Big 12 Conference. He downplayed questions that were asked specifically about the value that BYU brought to the TV deal. And he said, look, it doesn't matter. We don't bifurcate this out, separate everybody's individual value. We're the Big 12 Conference. We're a team. We're a family. Whoever brings whatever to the table is what's at the table. It was cool. It was refreshing. I don't think it was surprising, but it was different. And maybe it's just been because it's been so long since BYU has been in a conference, but it felt like BYU has improved since they were there in the Mountain West. They are a true team player, happy to be a part of this family. And that was cool. It felt cool. Brett Yormark, he is the real deal. We've talked about Brett Yormark a bunch. Everybody has. The guy's the real deal. Another big takeaway from me, listening to Kalani, listening to Tom Homo, Lavelle Edwards, man, he's still alive, man. He's like Elvis. He didn't die. He just went home, and his influence, his spirit, his whatever is still involved in this BYU program, even though he's passed on. I mean, he's been gone for a while now, and people still talk about Lavelle with a kind of reverence and respect as if he's still doing his thing, coaching BYU on the sidelines. I'm excited to see how his influence and his memory gets, I guess, wrapped into what BYU does in the Big 12, because there's no question about it. Without Lavelle Edwards, BYU's not in the Big 12 Conference today. And I think Kalani understands that. I think Tom Homo understands that. I think most of BYU understands that. And they're going out of their way to make sure to give Lavelle the credit that he's due, even though he's passed on for a number of years ago. It's been a cool feeling for me, just as a fan who loved Lavelle Edwards, like so many of you guys who are BYU fans. It's cool to just kind of watch that and take that in. And finally, my last takeaway, it's time to cement Tom Homo's place on BYU's Mount Rushmore. Whether that's a football Mount Rushmore or whether that's just an athletics Mount Rushmore, whatever you want to do, Tom Homo is absolutely cemented as one of the biggest, most important, legendary figures in BYU athletics history. He's right there with Lavelle. I mean, in terms of what he has done for BYU over his 20-some-odd years as the athletic director, nobody else has done more, and nobody else has set BYU up for future success quite like Tom Homo has. Obviously, there's more people involved than just Tom, but Tom gets the credit. He's at the top of the food chain, so we're giving Tom the credit. Just an incredible job from coaching hires, from facilitating resources, managing the Mountain West Conference, independence, and then finally, of course, getting BYU into the Big 12. Tom Homo has done more for BYU athletics than maybe anybody else in history. His impact is huge, and everybody should just accept he's on BYU's Mount Rushmore, and there is no more debate about it. Thank you so much for tuning into the Daily Dose. A lot of good things coming for BYU. A lot of good things coming out of media days. Excited for the future. Until next time, give them hell.